Hi, I'm Jane from Beyond the Empty Nest. Welcome to this live video. Before we start, I think it might be nice to just take a couple of nice breaths. You might want to start by bringing your shoulders up to your ears, breathe in, and then breathing out, release. Nice. Let's do that again. So, hi Karen. So hopefully now you've arrived. We've just taken a couple of breaths. Let's do one more. Hi Sally. Breathe in, bring the shoulders up to the ears. Breathing out. And release. It's nice to feel like you have arrived and you're here. And to have that intention that to get whatever it is that you need from this video, whatever you need to hear, whatever you don't need to hear, let that go over your head. But whatever is right for you, have an intention that you will hear that today and it will really help you. So today I'm wanting to talk about anxiety and if it affects you. I will share my story a little bit of how it has affected me in my life and in the hope that that helps you. And anxiety is, let's give it its real name. It's fear. It's fear. We call it anxiety because maybe, I don't know, it sounds better, but it's fear. And fear is a primal thing. It affects us. It's not rational. So there's absolutely no point in trying to understand, why we might feel a fear, why it doesn't make sense, because it's irrational. It's a primal thing. It's about our survival. And, I'll talk a little bit more about that. But how does fear affect you? For me, it's that feeling in the pit of my stomach. It's feeling sick to my stomach and digestive problems. When I was at the height of my anxiety, I was constipated for 2 weeks. Okay, sorry to talk about these things, but it really, because I was holding on. It can feel like a tightness in the chest, really affecting how you breathe, how you hold yourself. You can feel it in your throat, perhaps, like a tightness, like a lump in the throat, like the words get stuck. You're not able to express yourself because of that anxiety. So it can affect us in all sorts of ways. It can affect the immune system. It can mean that you're picking up, you run down, you're picking up every bug that's going. But actually, real fear paralyzes us often. And it has for me in the past. It feels like we're paralyzed by fear. And how is that? Think about that, being paralyzed. We can't move. We can't move forward in our lives. We can't think. We can't make decisions. We're stuck. We're paralyzed by fear. We're stuck. And, it's kind of like we're powerless. And that's a really difficult, place to be. And it affects every aspect of our lives. It probably, if you feel anxiety, it will affect everything. Your job, your relationships, your feeling of self-worth, every thought that you have sometimes, the things that you choose to do or not to do. It stops us, doesn't it? It stops us enjoying life. It stops us maybe making difficult decisions or maybe doing something that's a bit of a risk, but we really want to do it, but we're frightened. It stops us from living our dreams. And so fear is, it's something that it's exhausting. Hi, Mel. It's exhausting and it drains us. And just a little bit about my story. I won't go into too much depth, don't worry. I'm not going to give you chapter and verse, but sometimes I think it's helpful to hear someone else's story, because we can relate to it. And I love listening and reading about other people's stories, and I feel like I can relate to that story. So my story goes back to when I was very young, very little, and I didn't know this for very, very many years. It's only very recently that I sort of can piece this story together. But basically, because of my childhood, and it was a normal childhood in lots of ways, but there were certain aspects of it that meant that when I was a very small child, like 18 months, I made the decision, or not the decision, but I got the message. The message was given to me, not intentionally and not through any fault. I'm not blaming anybody, but the message to me was that I wasn't lovable. I wasn't good enough. That was the message. Obviously at the time I didn't know that, and for many, many, many years I didn't know that. But I've since realised that was what was happening. And so when I was young, when I was a small child, I was quite an anxious child. I managed to get through my adolescent years actually quite well. I think thanks to punk and spraying my hair blue or whatever. I don't know. As a teenager, I kind of was okay, not realising what was going on inside. It was almost like there was a time bomb ticking away inside me. So when I went away to university the first time, suddenly, I was with all these people, and that feeling of not being good enough and not being lovable just came to the surface. And I felt that awful anxiety. I didn't know where it was coming from. I didn't know why I was feeling it at the time. I felt it like every day was a struggle. I was paralysed by that fear. I had all those feelings that I talked about at the beginning, a sickness to my stomach, a heaviness, a tightness in my chest, an inability to do anything really productive. And so in the end, I left. I didn't deal with it. I left. And that kind of worked because I went back to something familiar, but it wasn't dealing with what was underneath. And so fast forward a few years, hi Jan, to when my daughter was born. And I remember very clearly, just after she was born, my husband was going back to work, and I was sat upstairs, hi Jan, and I sat upstairs with my daughter, a small baby, and my husband was going to work, and I was okay. But the second that door shut, as he left, as that door, remember now, we're going back 23 years, I remember now the sound of that door closing, and that door closing was like something inside me. It just hit me right in my solar plexus. And that anxiety again came over me. I was left with a small baby. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't good enough. And it just came over me again. And it was like I was at his mercy, the mercy of this feeling that just kept coming back and hitting me every time there was some kind of change in my life. And it was at that point the chicken casserole incident occurred, because I was mother and baby kind of meeting, and somebody said to me in conversation that they'd made a chicken casserole, and I was like, oh, did you make it from scratch or was it from a packet? Thinking, how could anybody at the time, I didn't think anyone could have a small baby and actually make a proper meal. And she said, oh no, I made it from scratch. And that comment, I took that comment and I thought to myself, that person is amazing. They can make a chicken casserole from scratch. I can't do that. I am rubbish. I am a terrible mother. I am a terrible person. I am unworthy. And again, that feeling just hit me. This anxiety, this feeling of not being worthy and not good enough. And I came home and I felt terrible. And I absolutely laugh about that now, because I think, how ridiculous is that I thought that chicken casserole comment sent me into a tailspin. But actually, don't you think that, our thoughts, you can have one little thought and it can send you into a whole feeling of anxiety and emotion. One flimsy little piece of evidence that your mind hooks onto and comes to the conclusion that you're not worthy and that you're not good enough. That's what I did. It was a flimsy piece of evidence and it didn't stand up, you know, to scrutiny at all. But at the time, it was pure evidence to me of my unworthiness and my being completely unfit. And that is the power of our thoughts. So that kind of happened. There was a few things happened. Fast forward again to my son being born. I'd been on antidepressants for a long time, but I came off them when I, you know, was pregnant, etc., breastfeeding. But I remember things like being in the shower, not wanting to come out. The thought of coming out of the shower, the comfort of the water, of being enclosed, the feeling of having to open that shower door and step into the world filled me with dread. I was having palpitations and anxiousness just about coming out of the shower. Again, with the food, I remember sitting looking at the oven at one point, and I was putting, my culinary skills are being tested here, but or being highlighted here, or lack of. Looking at the oven and thinking, I was going to put something on like fish fingers and chips for the kids, my husband was away. Staring at that oven, not being able to move, not being able to put those things in that oven because something in me was saying, you're rubbish, you can't do this, you can't look after your children, why are you even trying? And that feeling, in fact, just talking about it, I can tap into that again, that feeling of unworthiness, of anxiety, of Karen's saying that her anxiety started after her granddad died. That often is the case. I think it's a change, isn't it? And it just comes over you. It just hits you. But it probably is related to something that's gone on earlier on in our lives that we've decided, a message that we've received that we're not good enough, etc. And somebody that maybe supported us who's not there anymore, or a change, it comes over you. And I think that was when, after my son was born and I was looking at this oven and not being able to move because I just was paralyzed, that I started to investigate the idea of doing something about this. And that's when I started on my journey. That's when I started to release first of all, releasing those physical feelings in the body, because we trap our emotions in the body. So I started to release those. I started to change the patterns of thinking. It took over time, not straight away. And I think the thing for me, it was tapping into the whole of who I am. Tapping into the whole of who I am. Physically, mentally, spiritually. And in that place, fear cannot exist. It cannot exist in that light, because fear, it feels real at the time. And I know, I've been there, I felt that fear. But it's not real. And when you shine that light on the whole of who you are, that fear disappears. And it was a process, and it took time, and it's still a process. And, you know, when my daughter was 16, hi Catherine, when my daughter was 16, that feeling, she used to tell me everything when she was little, everything. She used to tell me every thought. She wanted to be with me, she wanted to spend her time with me. And then she, when she was about 16, of course, naturally, she was in her bedroom. She was talking to her friends. She wasn't talking to me. And I still felt that pain. I felt that pain. I felt that rejection. But because I'd started on that journey, I knew what to do with those feelings. And I knew that fear wasn't real. And I knew how to tap into the whole of who I am. And that's what got me through. Karen, I'm just saying, So you get anxious every day, and your son has severe anxiety. Wow, and he nearly died. Yeah, wow. So you've been through an awful lot, and he's got anxiety, and that's hard, isn't it? When people close to us have anxiety. And I think that the thing that we can do is to set an example to them and be a role model and tap in, stand in our strength, tune into our power, and overcome that and be a role model for them, and then help them through it. I think we have to take that journey, and then we can take other people with us. And it feels like we've got no control. It feels like we can't control that. For me, it kept coming upon me. It kept suddenly, as I've said, you know, with my story, it kept suddenly reappearing because I hadn't dealt with it. But I was on medication for many years, 9 years. And I think medication, you know, I was on paroxetine, some people may know that. I think it can really help you to get on an even keel, but it's not the long-term solution, because when we're on medication, it's kind of, we don't feel ourselves. We're not really tapping into that reality of who we are. And when we do, when we step into that, when we can physically release the feelings, when we can start to reprogram the patterns of thoughts that are creating the anxiety, when we realize that, when we live it, the fear can't, it can't stay, it's not real, it disappears. And you know, I think the first step, and I'm so, you know, I honor the bravery of you wonderful women who have joined the group and who are willing to, you know, open up and willing to share your feelings, and because it's deep, isn't it? It's hard to face. But I've said before in other videos, you know, unless you face it, you're not going to be able to deal with it. And so I honor that you have started that first step. And to continue that transformation, you know, it's about starting to make those changes. It's about that transformation. And I've been through an amazing transformation. And the thing I can say to you now is that the most precious thing in the world to me now is that I know my self-worth. I know my self-worth. And I'm able to live with that and in that reality. And I have the tools and the skills to know that when I'm feeling pain, because we still feel pain, but I know what to do with that. I know how to deal with it. And I have something inside me that is so strong. And I have a practice that I come back to that gives me so much strength. And it tells me who I am, and it lets me know that my fear isn't real. And I believe it and I know it. If somebody would have told me years back when I was having all those feelings, I would have not believed them. But I know that I've been through it. So that's why I created my program. I've created a program. I've called it It's Your Time to Fly, for women in this situation to start to release and physically release, change the mental patterning, tap into the whole of who you are, to shine that light, to have somebody hold your hand through that process and guide you. And I would be absolutely honored to be your guide. And, you know, I hope that my story has inspired you. I hope that if you feel you're ready to make a change, to not be gripped by that fear that can paralyze you, if you want to change that and know what to do and how to change that, then, you know, reach out to me. That's what I want to help you. I know that I can help you because I've done it. So just reach out to me, and I hope, you know, if it's appropriate for you, that we can talk, and I look forward to hearing from you. But I wish you more than anything that you can live that joyful, vital life that you were meant to live, because fear robs us of that. It robs us of that joyful, vital life that we're meant to live. That's what we're here for. That's what we're on this planet for, to find our authentic self. And that is my wish, and that is my passion, and that it won't take you years of wondering what on earth is going on, that together that we can go through this process. So thank you so much for joining me. I'm really honoured that you have, you know, because I know your time is precious, and I'm honoured that you've joined me. And I look forward to connecting with you more. And I honour your bravery. And yeah, from the depths of my heart, I really do offer whatever I can offer to help you. So I think that's it for today. If you have any more questions, post them, you know, in this thread, or after the video is finished. You can still post your questions, but you can message me. We can talk if you want to delve a little bit deeper. So I'm wishing you a wonderful evening and sending you lots of love. Thank you so much.